Bright Falls, a quaintly idyllic small town that has been called an iconic symbol of all that.
My name's Oskari Häkkinen, I'm the head of franchise development at Remedy. Let me tell you a little bit about Alan Wake. So Alan Wake's a best-selling writer, but he has a problem. He hasn't managed to write anything in over 2 years. Now, in hope for him to gain back his creative flow, his wife Alice takes him to the idyllic small town of Bright Falls. But when she goes vanishing without a trace, Wake finds himself trapped in a nightmare, and his latest work, a thriller novel that he doesn't even remember writing, is now coming true before his very eyes, word for word. Alan Wake's a psychological action thriller. It's a story-driven experience, and what we're trying to do is give the players a heart-pounding thrill ride, and with that we've kind of combined the mind of a psychological thriller with the body of a cinematic action game. Light is a key gameplay element in Alan Wake. It represents, light and darkness. Light represents the sane world and sanity, and darkness is danger and terror. And Wake's enemies are covered in these shadows and protected by a dark presence that has possessed them, and only light can drive away this dark presence and make them vulnerable to damage. So in Alan Wake, you should fight with light when it comes to darkness. Alan Wake is definitely, a story-driven experience. It's a Remedy game. Let's start with that. So, if people know our previous works, the Max Payne games, they'll definitely know that it's a story-driven but also a cinematic movie-like action game. And that's what Alan Wake is as well. It's a different premise, it's a different story, it's a different concept, but it still has the elements of what a Remedy game is. So it's a strong story, it's a beautiful story, but it's also that cinematic action game. And I think we've got to a really good place with kind of blending those two layers together of story and action. So, when we were first concepting coming up with the prototypes of Alan Wake and conceptualizing it, we felt that a writer really fit very well as the main protagonist with such a game that we want to tell a deep story. So Wake's inner monologue is a really important tool for us to, without just constantly going to cutscenes, Wake can tell how the story is progressing, and it can be even during or after an action scene that we can still keep the player very immersed in the story and tell the story without just having cutscenes to tell the story. Another one is Wake's missing manuscript page. He doesn't remember writing. These manuscript pages foreshadow some of the creepy and dark events that happen because they're actually coming true, and that's the psychological aspect of Alan Wake, is that you don't know when these events are going to happen or how they're going to play out, but you know that these are going to come true in some shape or form as you progress through the game. The game's structured like that of a TV series, and for a thriller that works really well for us. So if you think about a movie, for instance, and having a game that has the story arc of a movie, at one point you can reach the peak of that story, and it's hard to keep peaking and peaking and peaking. Whereas with a TV series style structure, it allows us to keep the player on the edge of their seats. So the game is broken down into episodes where we can have lots of small story arcs, and during those story arcs in an episode we can peak and we can end on a cliffhanger, and the next episode can start with, for instance, a daytime scene which is a lot more serene and about meeting the locals around Bright Falls and understanding what their motives are, and meeting the other characters in the story. But then the nightmare scenes in the nighttime are obviously more about danger and action. So there's so many things that I could tell you about Alan Wake, but that's in a nutshell. I mean, light and darkness are key within the story, but also in the combat. And I think that we're in a very good place of meshing these two things together, and I think we've done a good job.